So I don't really know how to explain this, or if it even fits on the sub, or even what actually happened if I'm being honest. But regardless, I will try to relay the story. I was driving to work this morning, and I'm coming up a side street that connects to a very busy road in my area. It's the main road that stretches through like 20 towns. I get to the red light at this main road and sit there for about 15 seconds before seeing a car pull up behind me. As the car comes to a complete stop behind me, my eyes drift from the rear view mirror to the stoplight in front of me. It was red still. I then look down to my radio clock and it says 7:36. And this is going to sound strange, but for a period of time that seemed to stretch on until infinity, I kind of felt like this intense pressure all around me. Like I was zoned out and couldn't clear my head or move my body because I was obsessed with those numbers I was seeing. Like I was in a trance or something, and it wasn't silent around me, but it was at the same time, like very, very loud, pressing silence. I couldn't move, but I also wasn't trying to move. Almost like I was paralyzed with fear and knew I was frozen, but couldn't really process it or try to move. I don't know, I really can't explain it. Even now, it's so confusing to me. After who knows how long of being stuck in this trance, suddenly everything snaps back to normal. Instantly. The very first thing I register is that the person behind me is laying on their horn. I look up and see the light is green. I begin to drive forward, feeling completely 100% normal again. And once I get into the middle of the intersection, I sense this large presence to the left of me. I turn my head to look out my driver's side window just in time to see a huge truck coming right at me. It hits me and I could feel my body break. I felt and heard so many of my bones get absolutely crushed. Suddenly, I'm upside down in my car in so much pain I can hardly breathe, covered in glass, and I can hear someone screaming. The last thing I remember before passing out about 10 seconds later was seeing cop lights and distinctly thinking to myself, wow, how did they get here so fast? The next thing I remember, I open my eyes and I'm sitting in my car at the red light. The intense pain I felt a moment ago is fading fast, but it's still there. Only almost like a ghost version of itself, if that makes sense. I'm intensely confused at this point, and I just start looking around in a panicky way, and my eyes trail across the clock again. It says 7:36, and I'm beyond confused. I know it wasn't a daydream. It was so goddamn real. I'm frozen in place, staring at the clock, trying to figure out what the fuck just happened. After about 5 to 10 seconds, I hear the person behind me start to beep at me, but I'm shaking and about to cry and so overwhelmed with leftover fear that I can't even react to it. They start to lay on their horn and I still can't move because I'm just so confused and frightened. Now, at this point, I was starting to calm myself down and trying to rationalize what happened. I was beginning to convince myself that it had to have been just a daydream. It was early enough, and I was tired enough that I even started to think that I just dozed off at the red light and dreamed the crash. What the hell else could have happened, right? If it weren't for what happened next, I probably would have been able to go the rest of my life believing I had fallen asleep and dreamed it. The moment the clock turned 7:37, like the very second the numbers changed, a huge truck comes barreling through the light, definitely speeding. They ran their red light and crossed right in front of my car. A few seconds later, a cop, who must have just been driving behind the truck in the first place, runs the red light as well, turning on his lights in the process and beginning to pursue the speeding truck. They both drove out of my view within a few seconds. I was so shaken, I just pulled my car to the side of the road right where I was and sat there in silence for I don't even know how long. Like, what normal explanation could I possibly come up with for this? There isn't one. I hadn't seen the truck or the cop car before they ran the light in front of me. So how did the dream crash I had include those very specific and very real details? The entire area I live in is covered in trees, so it's not like I can see very far down the road in either direction. I know for a fact I did not see the truck or the cop car before I experienced the crash. I'm still so shaken. How do I rationalize this crazy experience to myself? I feel disillusioned by something, but I don't even know what. I feel like I'm going crazy. I need to share this with people who won't automatically dismiss this as an hallucination or a dream. I have never had any head injuries, or have never had mental health problems, and have never lived any abuse in my life. I need help figuring this out. I'm a 38-year-old female. When I was 20, I had a job bartending. I worked there for several years. A couple years ago, I got a friend request from this girl, let's call her Melody. I look at her pic in her profile, and she doesn't ring a bell at all. But we have a couple common friends, and they're all from that time in my life, when I had that bartending job. So I ask around our mutual friends, and they all say they remember us being very close, always together, even being at my house every time there was a get-together. I showed my husband, he was my boyfriend back then, and he gives me the biggest what the fuck look. How can I not remember this girl? She was your BFF. You were literally always together working the same shifts. I think I'm going crazy. I remember nothing of her, not her name, not her face, just nothing. He described very detailed moments that I do remember, but I can't picture her there at all. Has this happened to anyone else? What could possibly explain this? P.S. I have an excellent memory. I've passed pharmaceutical exams that I've needed to know over 1,800 medications by heart. This just happened, and my heart is still beating like crazy. I was chilling on the couch, scrolling through Instagram, when I heard my cat jumping down from his bed. He usually wants to go outside after sleeping, so I looked at him and said, "You want to go outside, buddy?" with my annoying cat voice. He just looked at me, not answering, like a normal cat. I was ready to go let him out, but looked back at my phone for just a second. That's when it hit me. I let him outside a few hours ago. I turned my head to look back at him in confusion, but he wasn't there. I went to the front door and, yep, he was outside and came running in when I opened the door. I have no idea what just happened. Some years ago, my group of friends decided to celebrate my birthday by going all together on a weekend trip to a nearby city. In order to go there, we borrowed a 7-seat van from one of my friend's parents. After we packed all our stuff in the van, there was no room left for more bags or backpacks, and all 7 seats were taken. Or that was the general feeling. After some hours on the road, we had the need for a bathroom and gas stop, so we took the first highway exit with a gas icon. It happened to be one of those gas stations that aren't just on the side of the highway, but one where you have to drive a few minutes on a secondary road to get there. As we arrived there, we all felt weird. There was something unsettling about that place. Nothing we can point at directly, but we all noticed it. There were comments like, "Kind of place for being killed, abducted," and mentions to movies with weird supernatural towns like Silent Hill. Well, we needed to pee and refill the tank. Also, apparently, there was nothing wrong with the place, besides the general feeling. So we stopped there and do our business. Then, when everyone got into the van and we were leaving the place, someone pointed out that we now have a free seat in the van. So we stopped. We hadn't even left the gas station, and started joking about leaving him, the owner of this empty seat, there for not getting in the van when we all did. Then we tried to find who was the one left behind, but apparently we were all in the van. It was like if we were always 6 people. We have luggage for 6 people, only 6 seats were in use. Every personal item in the van was from one of us. After some minutes checking, we concluded that we made some mistake, and we were actually 6 people all the time and left the gas station. But the something is wrong feeling was with us for the whole trip. We even have a dinner reservation made a few days before the trip for the next day, and it was for 7 people. I don't know what happened in that gas station, but I'm almost sure we were 7 before stopping there, and somehow one of us was erased from reality. I made this account to post this because my friend thought it was a total glitch when I told him. I don't know what to think though, and never believed in these kinds of things. But here it goes. Some days ago in the morning, I went to the market to get stuff for lunch. I went alone because of all this COVID stuff. Before going, my mom gave me money and my sister helped me write down the list. We talked a bit, I took the car and left. When I came back, about 45 minutes after leaving, my mom and sister started looking at me, analyzing me almost. After an awkward moment, we start talking, but they were calling me a wrong name. They kept calling me Lucas. My name is Daniel. So maybe they're pulling a prank, I thought. But my mom is a total snob. I've never seen her pull a prank or laugh at something like this. Whatever. I just probably misheard them and interpreted it all wrong. I asked them to clean what I had brought and rush upstairs to my room. I take my computer and do some homework I had left. Then I play some video games. When I go back down, they call me Lucas again. Okay, I hadn't misheard them. They are calling me Lucas. Who the hell is Lucas? I asked them. My mom says, "That's your name, honey." "No, my name is Daniel," I say. Silence. "Oh, of course your name is Daniel," says my mom and sister, but they still weren't really sure. Longer silence. I make lunch, we eat together. No one mentions Lucas, no one mentions what happened before, but the air is really tense and I can barely eat. They gradually go throughout the day, start treating me like normal again. I still feel weirded out as to what happened that day. I don't have an answer. It was unsettling, still feels like that. No one we know is named Lucas. What were they thinking? A little update. We just finished having lunch and I tried to challenge them, asking personal questions as some of you suggested. I made inside jokes and they got them. I asked them to put my favorite TV show on and they asked which between my two favorites I wanted. We also talked about a trip we made when I was young. They knew everything. Then I asked them about the incident. They stare at me for a few seconds and change the subject. I ask again. Same thing happens. They do not want to talk about it. I am more afraid than before. What's going on? This just happened at the end of January, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It was a normal night. I was hanging out in the dorm, and my best friend, we'll call her Lexi, was on a date with this girl she met. I was sitting in my bed watching Grey's Anatomy when I got this overwhelming feeling of needing to call Lexi. I called her, and it immediately went to voicemail. So I just thought, okay, well, she probably turned off her phone for her date. About 10 minutes later, I get a call from Lexi, but the call is really wavy and broken up, but I could make out the words, "Pick us up, water." I immediately jump off my bed and head down to the water where she and her date were. When I get there, things feel very, very off. All the streetlights are turned off, some were flickering, and there is one car there along with Lexi and her date's car. I get out of my car and walk over to Lexi's date's car and hop in, and I'm like, "What's up? What happened?" Basically, they tell me that they were sitting by the water when a group of men started getting closer and closer to them. They get bad vibes and go back to the date's new car. Try to start it, and it doesn't start. Lexi tries to call me over and over again, but the call won't go through. I tell her that, around the same time, I got an overwhelming feeling of needing to call her, but it went straight to voicemail. When we switch over to my car, they realize that the men are gone, but the car is still there, only it's on the other side of the parking lot. Spooky to say the least. I have heard about timeline switches in which all technology stops working. I'm wondering if, in an alternate timeline, those men hurt Lexi and her date, and the timeline switched to one in which they stayed safe. Also the next day, Lexi and I wake up with extremely puffy eyes, nausea, and feeling weak and brittle. I wonder if the timeline switch took a toll on our body. Let me know what y'all think. So, for context, my grandfather has lived and worked on the same farm for his entire life. It's 100 acres, and for as long as he's been around, he's been constantly out and about doing whatever needs to be done. When my grandmother's own grandfather passed away, he left my grandfather his Scottish Rite Freemason ring. And though he was a Freemason, he wasn't a member of the Scottish Rite, so he refused to wear the ring until he had joined. He went through all the steps of which I have no clue what they are, and eventually became a member and was able to wear the ring. The ring meant a lot to him, as it was both passed through the family and he had worked hard to be able to wear it. But one day he came in from working the farm. Lo and behold, it had fallen off at some point. He and my grandmother were both rightfully devastated and scoured the property to no avail. This all happened around 5 or so years ago, but flash forward to present time and my mom is vacuuming out her new car of about 6 months that she had taken up to their family farm, probably twice. As she's vacuuming the back, she notices a ring and thinks it's just some novelty ring, but then takes a close look and sees masonry symbols and decided to take it up to the farm with her the next time she goes, assuming my grandfather will know what it is. About a month later she goes and shows my grandfather, who immediately tears up knowing what it is. No one has absolutely any clue how it got there, given that it had been lost into oblivion for years and her car had only been with her for 6 months.